Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be testing out one of the new Makeup Forever Artist to Go mini eyeshadow palettes. So they did just release two of these. I only picked up one shade. I picked up 600 Anywhere Caffeine. They did also release another one that was actually more of a purple, and I believe it's called Wherever Walnut. Yes, so the other one is 606 Wherever Walnut. So these are the only two that are on Sephora. I do believe these are also available on the Makeup Forever website. But once these became available at Sephora, I got very excited to try them out. Anytime there's an eyeshadow palette release, I am on it. I just love eyeshadow palettes, so I couldn't resist. So this is Anywhere Caffeine. Wherever Walnut seems to have a more pinky purple color story, but there was just something about it that I just really didn't like. So I decided to just pick up this one because even though it's a very, very neutral palette, I really just want to try out this formula because I think this is brand new. So they have had individual shadows before. I've never tried them. I don't know if they've actually had palettes, but as soon as I saw these, I knew I had to grab them. So this palette retails for 32 US dollars or 43.50 Canadian. This does say it is made in Italy, which we love to see, but it also says that it has a 6-month shelf life. Now that seems really, really short to me. A lot of eyeshadow palettes are either 12 months or 24 months. So I do think that that seems very, very short to me. But let's open this up. We have the inner packaging. It kind of reminds me of their blush palettes, just the way they're designed, except where those are tin, these are plastic, and they do have a little latch here. And inside you get 6 eyeshadows, and you do get a little mirror right there as well. So this is what the shades look like. So you can see you do get 2 shimmers and 4 mattes. So of course this is a very, very neutral color story. I am just going to be creating one look with this, but my overall goal is to test out the formula and let you know if it's worth it. Right away, I'm a little bit skeptical of the 6-month shelf life, just because I feel like if you're spending that much money for 6 shades, you probably want a little bit longer of shelf life. I don't always honor that. A lot of my eyeshadows are expired, but I just think it's something important to point out. So let's take a quick look at some swatches. I'll get into creating a look. I'll show you some comparisons and my final thoughts on the palette. So we have the shade Virtuoso, which is a shimmer, Lead, which is a matte, Slick, which is a matte, Clever is a matte, Gutsy is a shimmer, and Anywhere Caffeine is a matte. So you can see we just have a very neutral, warm tone color story. I have been really leaning into the warm tones. I feel like we're getting a lot more warm toned eyeshadow palettes lately as well. I have been leaning into those as well, just with my hair being on the warmer side these days. So I have been having fun playing with warm tones, but let me zoom you in, we'll create a look, and then I'll share some comparisons and final thoughts. Okay, so obviously today's look isn't going to be anything crazy. I do want to mention when I was swatching these that these mattes do almost feel more like a cream to powder. Like if you're familiar with the Natasha Denona cream to powder, they feel a lot like that. I am going to start with the shade Clever. And again, this is going to be a very basic, very simple, very everyday look, so it's looking quite pigmented. So when I tried to tap off the excess, I really didn't get anything. So I'm definitely thinking these mattes are actually much more of a Natasha Denona-esque cream to powder formula, or even the brown shades in Charlotte Tilbury's Beautyverse palette that she released last year for holiday. They remind me a lot of that as well. That does not upset me. I absolutely love that type of formula. But just keep that in mind, that that is what these mattes are like. Again, I love that type of matte formula because I just think they apply beautifully to the lids. They're easy to blend. They're not too pigmented. I will say this brown is quite pigmented though. I feel like I got a lot on my brush there. And that's another thing with the cream to powders, is that sometimes you really have to work to build them, but I feel like this shade picked up a lot of pigment really quickly. Same thing on the other side. Another thing I noticed from the swatches is that the shimmers really don't seem to have a ton of impact. So they're definitely not going to be your most sparkly, impactful shimmers. That being said, I am expecting to like this palette because Makeup Forever has always been really more geared toward pro makeup artists, so I do expect them to have really great products. I haven't tried a ton of their products, but their foundations and lip liners have always been a favorite, but I do expect good things when it comes to their products simply because they are a pro brand. I do feel like this shade sheared out really, really well, and I definitely feel like one shade can give you quite a bit of depth. Okay, I'm just gonna go into Lead next. I probably wouldn't use both of these shades on a regular day, but I do want to try out as many as I can. So using this one for my outer corner. Another thing too is because these mattes feel much more like a cream to powder, I think that is what is giving this palette the shorter shelf life. So that is annoying, but that is probably what that is. These are blending beautifully though. I'm not worrying too much about what's going on directly in the center of the lid just because I am going to add a shimmer over top. So I'm going to go into this deepest shade here. This is the shade Slick. I would probably use this as a liner in the future, but like I said, I do want to test these out as much as possible. The first two mattes have blended together beautifully, and I'm really, really happy with them, how they're looking so far. I do think that is a plus sometimes when you get these super creamy mattes. I think the bonus of that ends up being that they're incredibly easy to blend and work with. More than I intended, so I'm gonna go into my crease brush and I'm just gonna really blend that edge. Okay, so I definitely got too much of that dark shade, but it did let me blend it quite easily. So next I'm gonna go into Gutsy. I'm just taking this one with a brush as well because I kind of want to test it. These are not the most impactful shimmers, so I might be able to get a good, application with just a brush. That actually applied beautifully with a brush. It gave me minimal fallout. Okay, that turned out quite nice. Again, just a very simple look. Maybe too many shades, but very simple. But I actually do like how it turned out. I'm happy with how this applied with a brush. I do think these shimmers, like I said, they don't have the most amount of impact, but they do also feel quite creamy. So I think that also helps with the fallout situation. The eyes are definitely way smokier than I wanted, but I am happy that I really didn't get any fallout with that shimmer. So I'm gonna go into the lightest, brightest one and start on the inner corner. It's a beautiful brightening shade, that's for sure. I'm gonna do the inner corner on both sides, but I also want to bring it up to see if I can lighten up the eye look a little. Oh, okay, that one's pigmented actually. Yeah, I definitely brought that up too far and now it kind of looks a little bit more gray, which I don't love. Let me see if I can add some of that darker brown over top. Yeah, that worked. Okay. So it ended up going a little bit gray, which I don't like, but I do think it's beautiful for the inner corner and for brightening up the inner corner, or using as an all over lid shade if you don't already have that more shimmery brown down already. So I'm just doing the same thing on this side. Just kind of bringing this up too because I love the light bright effect. And I'm just not going to bring this in too much. In the future, I would probably end up using this shade all over my lid or just using the mattes. But I did want to, like I said, test out as many of these as possible. And I like how that turned out. So let me pop off camera, pop on some mascara, and then we'll go into some comparisons and my final thoughts. All right, so here is the finished final look, and I definitely went way smokier than intended, but I did want to try as many shades as I possibly could since I was only creating one look. But let's talk about some comparisons. First off, this color story is not even a little bit unique. Of course, this is a neutral brown color story. We have this color story in our collection many, many times over. especially if you own a lot of makeup like I do, you definitely have this. Now, I do have some that are so similar. The first one is actually the Sigma Spicy palette. I'm not sure if they still have these. If they do, I will link them down below, but this is the Spicy palette. You can see side by side here, they are very similar. Obviously, Sigma gives you 3 more options, but they're very similar. I'll pop up the swatches and you can see I pretty much perfectly duped the Makeup Forever palette. And I really do like the formula in the Sigma palette as well. And I will say the shimmers in the Sigma palette give a lot more impact. The next palette I pulled to swatch is the Patrick Ta Major Dimensions eyeshadow palette. I just lost one of my shades, but of course, very, very similar. If you have the Patrick Ta, you have this. Same with the Sigma Spicy. With the Patrick Ta, you're also going to get a lot more impact from your shimmers. His mattes are also incredibly, incredibly buttery. You also get double the shelf life with the Patrick Ta, and you get the cream shades as well. So something worth noting, but the Patrick Ta is a lot pricier. I also pulled my Not a Box of Chocolates palette from ColourPop. So this is one of my favorite neutral brown palettes. So you can see obviously a lot of similarities. I'll pop up the swatches, and once again, very, very similar color stories. The ColourPop shades are just as pigmented, just as vibrant. The shimmers pack a lot more punch, so that is something to mention. Of course, you get a lot more shades in the ColourPop. And the last palette I pulled is the Natasha Denona Biba. Of course, we are getting all of those neutral warm browns once again. And Natasha Denona's shimmers, I was able to get quite similar, but her shimmers are even much more impactful than the Makeup Forever. So the color story in this Anywhere Caffeine palette is not at all unique. We definitely have these shades probably many times over. But I do really enjoy the color story. Again, this isn't my favorite look that I could have created. This is definitely way smokier than I'm comfortable with, but I was just trying to try out all of these shades if I could, and I did all except for one. But I know I can create a really simple, easy, everyday look with this palette. I think it's beautiful. I quite like the matte formula in here. Like I said, it does feel almost more like a cream to powder, much like the cream to powder in the Natasha Denona, the matte shades in the Charlotte Tilbury. This feels very, very similar. And I really like that formula because I think they give a nice amount of pigment, but they're also incredibly easy to blend. And they just melt into one another so well that it does take a lot of the work out of blending. So I really do personally enjoy that type of formula. However, the shimmers in here, if you like a good impactful shimmer, you're not going to love these. I really did not get much impact from my shimmers at all. The most impact I got was from that white shimmer when I brought it in too much and then put the brown back over top. That's how I got some shimmer. I love the mattes in here. The shimmers are fine. I think they're a nice everyday shimmer, but again, if you're looking for impact, you're not going to get it with this. So even though this is a very, very neutral, boring color story, what I was really trying to test out was the formula. And I feel like I have a good feel for the formula, and I can confidently say I do quite like this palette. I think it's really, really nice. I do wish the shimmers had a little bit more, but I do like it. I do think this will be a fantastic travel palette because it's so small. I mean, it's the size of my hand. It is tiny, and I actually am going to be traveling at some point this month, and I'm thinking of taking this because it's good quality, it's easy to work with, it's got my staple everyday shades, and it's teeny tiny, so it's not going to take up a lot of room. So this might be one that I do travel with. I haven't decided yet, but this might be one that I do travel with. I think it's pretty. I think it's really good quality. The shimmers leave something to be desired, but overall the quality is really good and the mattes are not disappointing. So do I think this is worth it for $32 US? Yeah, as long as you don't have several palettes in your collection with this exact color story. I think if you are looking for something that is very neutral, very much this color story, but that is very tiny, that's going to be great for travel or for everyday, this could be really nice. If you do have a lot of other neutral palettes, I would definitely skip this one. Maybe try one of their other color stories if you're interested in those. because the formula is good. The formula is really, really good. Overall, I really like this. Is it a need? No, definitely not. Particularly this color story, it's not a need, but it is really nice. But if you love an impactful shimmer, skip it. And if you're eyeing up some of the other color stories, they might be more fun because you probably definitely have these shades already. But that is it for me today. Thank you so very much for watching. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!